now, here are the.
This is what's great about sports. This is the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game.
Winning isn't everything, but it's the only thing. In our business, there is no second place. Either you're first or you're last.
Ain't this what they've been waiting for? You ready?
And now, the W with Walls and the crew.
Good morning.
Where winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. On 100.1 FM.
Good morning.
And Facebook Live.
Good evening. Good evening. It's kind of weird just saying good evening. Normally we're talking in the morning on Saturday mornings, but this is a special edition W show today. We're recapping the top sports and pop culture stories of 2020 and going to give you a sneak preview of our top sneakers of the week of the year, actually. I should say. Right. And it's going to be fun. So as always, we thank everyone for tuning in. This show is broadcasting live on all social media platforms today. How's everyone doing?
Good, man. Doesn't it feel weird being here on a Wednesday?
It does. It does.
You know what feels even weirder?
What's that?
The end of 2020. Like it's literally the end. Or so we think it's the end. We hope.
Yeah, the feeling of 2020 is going to stretch to about half of the year. So
yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this point next year.
Hopefully it's not the same as it was this year. Hopefully we're gonna have a running back like the Chiefs are trying to do this year.
Definitely.
Jazz, how was your week?
It was good. Like you said, it's weird being here on a Wednesday, so I'm only halfway there, but it's been good so far.
Good. All right, so we're going to start with our sneakers of the week. Noel, let's start with you. Since this is a special edition show, let's get to your kicks for this week. For this year.
For the year, so I have to be honest. Disclaimer: I did not get a single pair of my sneakers of the year.
Definitely
couldn't do it. Couldn't get the Fear of God Triple Blacks. Those were definitely the highest on my list. Those were number one. The Retro Sixes. I had all year to get them once they came out, and I just kind of didn't. I just kind of was like, I'll do it later, and then here we are, end of the year. The Nike Dunk Low Kentuckys. Those were actually very, very hard to get. And they had a resale value in right around $650. So that was a no. Personally, with the J. Cole's, I just really thought it was a really dope shoe. I really like J. Cole. He's probably my favorite rapper at the moment. So I just thought it was really dope that he's able to put out his own shoe. And we come to the Kobe Sixes. Obviously, these mean a little bit different after the year that's we've had and what happened at the beginning of it. This is my favorite Kobe shoe of all time. I had a pair back when they came out. I wasn't able to get my hands on them. Obviously, this year it's a little different. But those are my five. I think I got a pretty good lineup. I didn't really have any Yeezys this year or anything Adidas or that I could mix in there that I thought that it could make my five. But that's my five right there.
So out of those five, which one would be the top of the year for you?
I'd have to go the Fear of God Triple Blacks. For sure. No, those are very, very much different. I like the all black. I've always wanted a Fear of Gods. I've never got my hands on a pair that was for the right price, I'll say.
Okay. All right. Q, we'll go next with you.
Yeah, definitely the Jordan Hare sixes. I'll start by saying this. This wasn't the year for shoes for me. And I feel like it was a down year until we started hitting later in the year, especially after like June or July. But the sixes, I love a good high top shoe, and especially like sleek like this. And I could disclaimer as well, like, no, I don't have any of these, but I'm hopefully getting these threes at some point in 21. So yeah, moving over to the Unite threes. I really love these, like the elephant print. You can't go wrong with that on a shoe.
Right.
And it is especially, these threes. And then the question to me is the red toes really takes me back to high school, Steve. It takes me back to when the questions first came out and it seemed like everybody had a pair of these. And red is pretty much my favorite color. So yeah,
like it was like the number one hoop shoe back then. I had a pair,
Yeah, and they just look good on. Like the toe was kind of questionable coming out, but then when you put them on, just like the way they look on your feet, like great shoe. And then moving over to the fours. The fours are pretty much my favorite Jordan. It was a fives at one point, and now it's slowly moving to the fours. And I just like this color scheme. Just like Noel said with the triple blacks, it kind of makes the shoe look different to me. It stands out from any kind of like four. And then to continue, my favorites of the fours, these are probably and it's really the color. It's not even because they're off white. These could have been Mattel could have made these, been a sponsor of these, which probably would have made them a lot cheaper. But the color, the monochromatic color in them, it's the best thing. And especially for me, I just love that design on the fours, man, and just how like layered it is. Favorite of year. So if we talk tops, it's on the bottom of the list, but it's definitely tops for 2020 for me.
Yeah. So that off-white four is your top for the year? Yeah,
it's tops of the year. There wasn't a sneaker that really looked better than this for me this year. And I really think it's that cream color really just does it for me.
Okay. All right. We're going to take a quick break, and coming up, you're going to hear my sneakers of the year and also Jazz sneakers of the year as well. We'll be right back. This is the W Show.
You're tuned in to the W with Walls and the crew, where winning isn't everything. It's the only thing. On 100.1 FM and Facebook Live. tuned in to the W with Walls and the Crew, where winning isn't everything. It's the only thing. On 100.1 FM and Facebook Live.
Back in the W Show Special Edition year-end show. We're going to dive right back into the sneakers of the year. Jazz, your turn up. And let's see what your sneakers are that you have this year.
Yeah, and starting off with the Air Jordan 1s. I like the varsity red. I really like that colorway. I think they're kind of a classic. They're a classic. The Air Force One React Qs. I feel like Air Force Ones really kind of made a boom this year, especially for girls. And so I like these a lot because they were something different. You know, I like the bottoms, the ice bottoms. So those were one of my favorites. The 4 Union Guava Ices. They were just different for me. I like the different colorway. Yeah. I like all the different colors.
And then the resale on those things is like, what is it, like $2,000 right now?
Yeah, nuts. I think it was like 22 last time I had looked at it. So obviously didn't get my hand on a pair of those.
And I thought thinking of me, and I saw these at the Nike store. I think it was at the Legends. I saw these shoes and didn't know that the resale was what it was. And the guy buying them right in front of me. And I was like, where'd you get those? And they, you know, on the back wall, they have like the discount shoes. And he got them for like $70. And they're reselling for $2,000. I was upset, to say the least.
Nuts. So, yeah, those were far out of my budget. But then the Air Jordan 5s, I like the off-white sails. I really like those colorway too, something different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the 5s, so I like those. And then like Q, I'm agreeing with Q on the off-white Jordan 4s. Those are definitely top of my Christmas list this year. And my favorite of the year, didn't get them, but hopefully in the near future I can get my hands on a pair of those.
Yeah, me and Jazz are both hoping these fall off of a truck. So,
Man.
Okay, I'll show you guys mine. So I'll start with the Nike Air Max 97 gold medals. They had these. There was a version of this that came out, which had the gold, and they also had silver. But these were the Olympic editions. Of course, the Olympics are pushed back to 2021, but they still brought these out in April, I believe. But yeah, these are definitely one of the ones. I didn't get these, but still, they're on my list to get. Next up, the Air Jordan 1 Dior's. Yeah, these right now reselling probably around like 12 to 15 grand is what they're going for. Yeah. Saw them up close. Actually, Travis Kelce had a pair on going into 2020 last year. Didn't know how he got those early, but it is what it is. Ben and Jerry's, the Nike Dunk SB Dunk Lows. I really want those. Those were one of the ones that I tried to get on the Nike sneakers at, but yeah, didn't get those. And then Nike 5 Protro, the undefeated, the Kobe's. Yeah, these are definitely in my top of the year because it was a pack. And so you got 2 sneakers. I think they were the retail was like around $500, and you got both shoes. So now resale going over $1,000 for these kicks. And then last up is a Nike Kobe 6 Protro Grinch. I didn't get these when they originally released back in, I think it was 2013 though. So I tried to get them this year, and of course they came out on Christmas Eve, and Nike Sneakers app was not having it yet again. So yeah, but my top for this year would have to be the Ben and Jerry's Nike SB Dunk Lows. I really, really wanted those. Right now, I think the resale on those things are crazy. It's probably like $1,500 for those. So yeah, these are my.
To talk more about the Dior Jordan 1s, did I hear you say 15 grand or did you mean 1,500?
No, 15 grand.
15 grand. Oh.
And they came out with a lower cut,
low and a top. Low and top. Yeah.
Yep. So 15 grand is last that I saw them. That was before Christmas. So could be a little bit less right now, but 15,000 is what they were going for on just resale outlets.
And it's a guy, in his mom's like basement that's got like 14 pair of these just sitting there.
Yep.
Nobody will buy them because they're over 10 grand. And he's like just sitting on them like, yeah, no, next week is the week. That's when the NBA player is gonna hit me up and ask for these.
Yeah.
If you don't get your goofy self out of here.
And they just sitting there.
They just sitting there in the basement.
Yeah, but the thing about these shoes is that if they didn't have Dior on them, like for Christian,
they would be
they would just be a regular pair of Air Jordan 1s. I mean, resale probably $300 or $400, but
because they look good. Like they definitely look good. Like, but that colorway, like without the Dior on it, it means, like you said, it means for resale you're getting $100 off these, if that.
Yep. And right now, if you look at StockX right now, which is one of the resellers, they have a pair for 11,000, they have a pair for 8,000, and they have a pair for 13,000.
Sheesh.
And 13 grand is lowest ask for those.
What also is crazy to me, I thought was kind of, I mean, it was kind of, this is in line with the Kobe thing, but like, so recently I started working for Adidas, and I was like, you know what I want a pair of? I want a pair of, Crazy 8s, man. I had a couple pair coming up. I had a pair recently when I was at Park that I played in. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go get me a pair of Crazy 8s, man. I can rock them. There's people on the net selling Crazy 8s for $400 or $500, and it's a $60 shoe retail.
Sheesh.
Just because of the name Kobe on them. I'm like, you guys are insufferable. This is just awful. Like you're terrible human beings, honestly.
Yeah,
but
gotta capitalize. Name of the game, man.
Man, I'm talking about
Yeah, but I mean, you got to think about it though. Like you said, you capitalize on the name, and of course, if let's just say you had a pair of those Crazy 8s, if you're not gonna wear them, what are you gonna do? Either keep them on ice, or you're gonna resell them. And I think that's the thing right now. It's those resellers. It's not like it was back in the day. We really didn't resell our kicks. We bought them and we wore them.
And I mean, I was in
them and held them.
Yeah, exactly. And I was in the game for a little bit, coming from starting in like the middle of high school all the way up to probably my second year in college. I was in that game, but I was in the baby stages of it, where we was waiting outside with it. Like we was outside the mall waiting on them, and once we got our hands on them, or a couple pair of them, we had a couple people with us. Then we turned a profit. Then we turned that into more shoes, and then now we have our whole little business going. But now it's like you got the bots, and you got the money to pay for the bots. Then you're gonna be able to capitalize off of that. So it's just funny how the game is evolved. I'll say as much.
Game and change.
It wasn't the same. They came out on Wednesdays, and our parents had to go get or at least my mom got my J's and brought them up to the school, and that's how it was. But I cannot tell you how many pair of Jordans that are are retros now that are coming back out, and I've run through
They
mine.
sat. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is what it is. But let's get to our top sports headlines of this year. Q, I'll start with you, man. What was your top 5 headlines of this 2020?
Man, my first top headline, number one, end all be all, was just Earl Thomas, and I hate for such a negative story for him and his wife, but it was just so. It was a bizarre story. And even the headline is Earl Thomas held at gunpoint by his wife. And then just getting into that and, the lie he told just to get out of quarantine. And it showed how desperate people were just to be outside of the house and away from their family. So, it's just one of those stories. You kind of see how indicative, not indicative, but you see how the weight that COVID and quarantine really put on people, and especially people like him with money that, there's no limits to your social life.
Right.
So it was an unfortunate story, but it was just one of those stories that stuck because it was just so bizarre from the top. And then I'll stay with football here, with DeAndre Hopkins getting traded to Arizona.
Ooh.
Like that that trade, I could almost say, it may have caused a shift in football, because, this year and even next year, getting rid of Bill O'Brien, you would look at the Texans as a team that, hopefully under some new coaching, hopefully under a coach like Eric Bieniemy, that could come in, really turn around the program. But instead of doing that, they trade away arguably their best player. Him and Deshaun Watson are 1A and 1B on that team, and then they send him to Arizona. But
where
Kyler
he's
Murray,
performing,
and Kyler Murray probably loves that. And I can't even say probably. I'm sure he loves that. And probably has the catch of the year this year, in the NFL. And then number 3, the Kansas City Chiefs organization finally making a move, not only to prohibit the tomahawk chop, but to stop fans from wearing headdresses and culturally appropriating indigenous culture, especially on this land that has been stolen from them. And an NFL team for the past 50 years has been mocking that type of massacre. So just that's important, because it needs to be a reminder that, the with all of the name changes going on, the Washington football team, more recently with Cleveland baseball team, getting rid of their name, it's time for teams like the Chiefs and the Blackhawks and the Seminoles and all of these teams that just make a mockery of indigenous culture. It just needs to go. And then number 4, rounding off mine, Chrissy Carr at K-State. I believe she's a sophomore or junior this year. I forget. Junior. Yeah. That's a top story for me, because within the social justice movement, locally, that, it became a story, with all of the racist actions that have happened between students and non-students around K-State. Just her getting athletes together, to band together to get things done on that campus. As far as the social justice movement, earlier this summer, that was huge. And have to bring that back up, because that was just a huge moment. And it was great to see a young Black woman actually leading that charge. So yeah, big props to her. And then finally, rounded out, I just put the Super Bowl on my notes because I wanted to get real sentimental. But the biggest story this year is the W Show, getting down to the Super Bowl, and really getting to experience Radio Row, and really get to see like the ceiling being taken off of the W Show, because it really opened us up to a whole new world. And it allowed us to see things with no ceilings. It just took the roof off of the things that we do. And then piggybacking off of that, another huge story is adding our newest addition, Jasmine, and everything willing, we all make it back to the Super Bowl. So, that'll be another top story at the end of 2021. But yeah, those 2 things coupled in, I think are really big, not only for the growth of what we all have been doing the past couple of years, but really seeing forward in the future. So,
all right, no, your turn.
So Q stole one of my stories. I'd like to point that out.
I was definitely a thief today.
Earl Thomas was definitely one of those where I was like, man, I don't think I've ever heard a crazier story. But yeah, no, if you don't know, if you're watching this and you don't know, just go ahead and Google it, Earl Thomas and wife, and go crazy. But one of my biggest stories I felt like was Bo Wallace and the NASCAR, them banning the Confederate flag. I thought that was huge. I thought Bubba Wallace stepped up into a role that he was kind of shoved into, and he could have shied away from the moment. He could have, stepped down. He could have, minimized it, but he made it a big deal, and he made his mark. And I think historically, NASCAR has been known as the sport that has those types of people involved in it. And he put his foot down and he said, "Hey, man, you're not welcome here anymore." And NASCAR backed him up, and I thought that was just huge. I thought it was really big, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. So props to Bubba Wallace, and props to NASCAR. My second story is The Last Dance. Being an NBA fan all my life, you know who Jordan is. You wear his shoes, you wear his jersey, you mimic his moves on the court. But I felt like The Last Dance, you really got to see, who Jordan actually was, other than being just, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. And he captured, audiences from week to week for the whole summer, basically. Like, I felt like everybody was hanging on to every word that came out of his mouth. A million memes sprung out of The Last Dance. It was just really, it was just for the NBA culture and just, culture in general. It was huge. And I think it took a lot of people back. And it was fun to see, my dad or my uncle talk about, "Oh yeah, I was watching that game. I remember that. I didn't know that." You know what I'm saying? And I thought that was huge. So, and I enjoyed it as well. I enjoyed every second of it. So yeah. Also, my last two were the WNBA and their activism, them stepping up into the moment and leading the movement. I don't want to minimize this at all. Like, they weren't part of the movement. They were the front runners. They were the leaders. They were the ones that acted. Like, they made the moves, and the NBA followed suit. And then, as well as other organizations that felt the same way. I would like to make a huge shout out to those women. The WNBA has a lot of diversity, but they all came as one. Like, I don't think there was anybody that was off code as far as what was being said and what was being communicated to the masses about what their message was. There wasn't a single person that I felt like that came out and said something and it was like, "Oh wow, that doesn't align with what you're saying right now." And nothing, not even with them being in the bubble, like, nothing came out as as them being like off, like anything. So I just want to make a huge shout out to them for stepping into the moment and just whether it be them going at a whole senator or having Black Lives Matter on the court or standing in solidarity. I mean, kneeling in solidarity. I think they did more than enough to prove that they were the backbone of the movement.
Definitely.
And then my final story is just the NBA bubble. And I mean, obviously they were a part of the movement as well. And they had, of course, huge voices, CP3, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving. But I just thought it was a very interesting social experiment to put all those guys in one place. They're all grown men. And they were actually able to pull it off with a few hiccups here and there. Certain players got in trouble for certain things, enjoying certain meals at certain places, or sneaking certain people into, certain areas. But at the same time, I thought that the fact that they are able to pull it off and name a champion and continue the season despite what everything that was going on, I think was a huge deal. And props to the NBA, props to Adam Silver. Like I said, CP3 and LeBron, they are, the leaders of the league. They're the voice of the league, I feel like. And they did a good job of just having everybody, let's just get in here, let's get it done, and move on. And of course, they added the movement into that, and I thought it was huge. There were things that I felt like they could have done better, but at the same time, like, they pulled it off. So huge shout out to them.
Yeah.
I thought it was a big story. And of course, they crowned the Lakers champion, LeBron James getting his 4th ring. So that was huge.
And then even to add to Noel's WNBA, that Maya Moore story, just of her quitting the game. So even that, like, the Noel's last 2, it's a lot of stories that branch off of those.
Exactly.
Jazz, your turn.
I'll start off. One story that I really enjoyed and is kind of a girl power story was the U.S. women national team reaching a partial agreement on equal pay. That was a big one for me, especially, being a soccer player too. I really like to see that they're finally getting that acknowledgement. And I'm hoping that, like, for women's sports in general, that'll kind of open up the doors for it to start to build and for them to get the respect and honors that they deserve. Another one that I really enjoyed was Alex Smith returning to the Washington football team. I think anytime like an athlete goes through a big injury like that, that's like a testament to their character. And so that's huge for him to be able to come back and even start at that rate and be able to recover from something like that. So I really enjoyed watching him work through that process and being able to come back. Another one that I really liked was the Deion Sanders being hired as a new head coach at HBCU. Especially this year with all the Black Lives Matter movement and people taking initiative. I thought it was really cool for somebody like that to go to a program and show athletes that it's not all about going to the Big 12 schools all the time, and that they can really still make a name for themselves and put these schools on the map more. And I think it'll be really cool also seeing his son commit there to watch them and watch how that goes down. I think it'll be really entertaining over the next couple years. And then, of course, last but not least, the Chiefs Super Bowl win, of course, and Patrick Mahomes' record-breaking deal. I think anybody around here would agree that we'd like to keep him around here as long as possible, at whatever the cost may be, even 500 mil. That's
definitely
nuts.
Half a billy.
Insane. But yeah, of course. And I think it's been really cool to see being here in Kansas City and seeing how the community has really gotten behind the Chiefs this year. And Sundays are almost like a holiday now. And it's all about game days. So I think it's been really cool to see the change since they have won, to see everybody really get into it and start to support the Chiefs and being around it. I think it's just awesome.
All right. So I guess it's on me now. So with I think one of the biggest stories, I'm gonna start with the 2 biggest I think that happened for the whole year, and I think the first one is, of course, Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant and John Altobelli, among the 9 that died in a helicopter crash when they were on their way to I believe it was to a AAU basketball game, and so they were, that was one of the biggest stories. It's kind of like sports just shut down, for a day. No one wanted to play, and it affected so many people. Just the Mamba mentality, and Kobe Bryant's just his effect on everybody in sports and everyone. I mean, we were on our way to the Super Bowl, as you talked about us going on there, and when that news came, I didn't believe it. Like, I was on my way to the airport. I'm like, this can't be true. And I know that was everyone's reaction. It was like they got the notification to their phone, and it was kind of, okay, wait a minute, hold on, is this for real or somebody? Because a lot of times you see TMZ that post a lot of stuff, and it's like, no, maybe this is something that got hacked or something like that, but ended up being a truthful story. And I was like, wow. And it affected, everyone. Even when we were down in Super Bowl on Radio Row, we asked a lot of the former and current athletes, and that was definitely something that had affected them over that weekend. And moving on to the next one, it would have to be all the sports being shut down due to COVID-19. I think that was in my lifetime, I had never seen anything quite like that. As far as where you turn on the TV and on ESPN, they had absolutely nothing to talk about. I mean, for weeks we had to come up with our own content to talk about, because there was nothing sports related that we could share with people, which is kind of interesting, because now it's like more and more stories are coming about, and it's still slow, but it's not as slow as it was when everything shut down. And I know Jazz took my other one with the Kansas City Chiefs winning, but I think the other thing that was huge, and I know Noah talked about it a little bit, was the sports leagues that stood together in protest and boycotted the games. Now, we saw it with the NBA, and it seems like they were the catalyst that they catapult everything that happened started with the NBA and the WNBA. As far as like March Madness, high school sports, and everything, they followed suit of what the NBA had done. And with them boycotting the games, and I believe it started with the Milwaukee Bucks, because a lot of what happened started in Milwaukee. And so they went and said, hey, we don't want to play. And the rest of the NBA guys, the Brotherhood, joined together and said, all right, well, we're not playing. And then you saw the MLB, they stopped, and MLS, they also stopped. So I think that was the next biggest story, in sports. And it's crazy to say now that you saw a lot of people via social media and so forth, just in awe of what these athletes were able to do, and making their voices be heard and using their platforms for good, beyond athletics. Even with the voting, you saw even locally guys like Patrick Mahomes, Tyrann Mathieu, using their platforms to get people out registered to vote. I know I've never seen that in my lifetime. Even when you look back to when President Obama was elected, right? You saw a movement, but you didn't see it as huge as it was when you saw just guys from each Major League Baseball, football, and basketball using their outlets to get people to get registered to vote. And so that was my top sports stories of 2020.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know there's still a lot, and people are probably saying there's still a lot that we didn't cover and we didn't discuss. And we can go over a couple. We still have about 10 minutes or so before we end the show, but we can go over a couple. Were there any others that you all thought that didn't make your list that we didn't talk about so far?
No, I didn't really have any honorable mentions on there, and I probably should have. But I like the how you said the NBA really kind of led off everything. I mean, they not only showed that the bubble was successful, but even the seriousness of all the players that had tested positive so early, which caused, started the whirlwind of everything shutting down, from NBA to March Madness to several music festivals. And that was such a big moment, because it was like during the day and everybody was home and just kind of like glued to the TVs to see like, we're really shutting down like everything.
Right.
So yeah, that was some really huge moments, and it's historical moments, especially with Rudy Gobert.
Right. And
he was one of mine.
Noel and I were at the Sprint Center, well, now T-Mobile Center, during the Big 12 tournament, and I got the notification, and Noel was like, "What? Nah, that can't. That's not true." And we kind of just like laughed it off. And then all of a sudden, it was kind of just that domino effect. And next thing you know, the Big 12 sends out the press release, and it's like, well, no fans are going to be allowed at the games. Then it's like only 200 people from both schools will have tickets. They'll be allowed. Then it was just only media will be allowed inside of the Sprint Center. And then within 24 hours, it was okay. We're shutting everything down. And I'm like, whoa.
There was nothing. And it was crazy because it's one of those moments that it'll be frozen in my memory forever. There's two of those this year, the Kobe passing and that. Just the fact of how it went in stages and how, like, at first how excited I was because I grew up watching the Big 12. I was like, I'm here now. Like, I'm actually covering it. I get to see it from start to finish. This is going to be great. Like, it's going to catapult us into something different. And then just to see it, like you said, a domino effect, just whittle on down to nothing at all. And the disappointment on the faces of the fans, it was just it was really wild to see in real time. And I'll always remember where I was when that happened. But that was, I mean, obviously that is the biggest story of 2020 was the fact that life itself shut down with the coronavirus outbreak. And the amount of people who contracted it and died, contracted it and had, effects afterwards, people's response to it, people's lack of response to it. It was just, when you kind of think about it, when you encapsulate everything, that all the reactions to it, it kind of blows your mind what happened this year. If you really think about it, I think a lot of people just kind of ignored it and kind of just was like, oh, it's just more, excuse my language, but shit on top of more shit. and like, it just was like, oh, it's just more. And then, but when you really think about it, it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with.
And now that you say that, right before when we were in the Sprint Center and the Big 12 and PA announcer was like, okay, well, this will be the last games of the weekend, and you heard fans just boo, and every time he say that, and that's all you heard. But then there was the Big 12 medical doctor who they had the small press conference with the media in there, and he said, well, the numbers would show that with the amount of people that are in this stadium right now, there's at least one person that has the virus. And we didn't, and I'm like, it was kind of mind-boggling, but when I look back on it, kind of like Noah said, it's like, wow, and that could spread, and then those people go to wherever city or wherever they're from, and then it spreads there, and it's crazy to just sit back and think about it like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think I kind of had a weird and different take on it too, because especially being in college and you're still playing, and there's some days where you don't want to go work out, you don't want to hit the weight room, and then to see everything in so fast, and especially being my last year in college, a lot of my teammates were like, they had their last games or their last seasons, and it was like we didn't even realize that was going to be the end of it. And it's like now having to all of a sudden, like, let alone picture life without even being able to watch it, but not being able to play anymore, or losing your last games in your last season. I think that's been huge, and I think it was hard mentally for a lot of athletes too to grasp that, especially college athletes.
Yeah, and talk about that from the athlete perspective, because I know, with some teams, everybody has like a group chat, maybe with the coaches or just the players. Really talk about like that live moment of how that group chat is, or how it is with the coach. Like how were you guys even notified? And really just run through that.
Yeah, and it was honestly, it was like one of those things where you didn't really believe that it was real, or it didn't hit you right away. I know, at least like for our group message, like the coach just sent in like, hey, it's unfortunate, but we're going to have to cancel fall season. And it was just kind of like, you just cancel it just like that. I don't understand. I don't understand. How can this just be done? And I think that was a lot of the response from, like I said, seniors and people that it was their last year. It's like, how do you just go out like that? And you always think, you might be dreading this day, or you might not be wanting to work out that day, but you never really think it's your last day, or it's your last game. And then to not have a senior night or something like that to give you that closure, and it's just kind of taken from you. I think that's the hardest thing to grasp about the whole thing.
And it's crazy, Q. And I don't know if you remember, we had the high school coach from Washington High School. We had him on our show, and he talked about the high school football coach, and he talked about just his seniors that were needed this season to be recruited. They needed their last season. I know college athletes, people all feel the same way. The feelings are the same, not being able to play your last game. But if you're dependent on that to be able to go to college, or to be able to go to the play professional, or whatever you want to do to start your life, it's like, man, I'm gonna have to figure out other ways to get noticed now. And he even talked about guys, they were still doing work, a little bit of workouts, but not much. And him just being able to have to pick up his phone and having to make those calls to different college coaches.
Yeah, yeah,
sure.
It is. Yeah, it was terrible times, but I mean, the good thing is seeing how everyone has kind of like adjusted so far, and especially not knowing what the year is going to hold. Even looking at Super Bowl, we don't even know how Super Bowl is going to look. We really don't know how a lot of things are going to look, especially going into the year. But overall, the year-end review, just from us as a whole unit, I think we've grown so much. And that's like that's a huge piece, and not even just in adding Jasmine, but just her growth coming into this, but then also our growth as a unit, and so hats off to everyone, especially in this year in review, because it's been tough juggling a lot of stuff, and I know Jasmine's had a lot thrown at her, but she's definitely handled it well.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. And this has definitely been a highlight of my year for sure, being able to start to take off and get to know you guys and see where the next year takes us.
Of course.
Yes.
And just to touch on a few that we didn't talk about. So the national title game, NCAA, Clemson, LSU over Clemson, 42-25, Joe Burrow. He had 6 touchdowns, and that was, a highlight of college football for 2020, just because they hadn't done much this year. Houston Astros, they were confirmed the team was cheating.
Oh, such a long year. Yeah.
Then you had Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder. That whole fiasco.
Yes.
Deontay Wilder walking out looking like
and then get knocked silly.
He did.
He got knocked silly.
Yeah, then you look at Steven Jackson, where he did his thing with starting the movement. I think this is what kind of fueled a lot of the professional athletes. He did that single-handedly. Fueled a lot of people to use their platforms and use their voice to speak out against all the racial injustice and everything that had been happening along the way. And then you saw the NCAA. Of course, we talked about the tournaments being canceled. Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but Tom Brady announced he was signing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah. No, that was a huge story, because again, like, you look at the shifts in football, and I think DeAndre Hopkins not only being one, I think Tom Brady being one, and really taking Tampa Bay from that like 8-8 type of team to a team that could potentially be a playoff and a Super Bowl contender. Not only this year but in the coming years.
Then you have the NFL draft that was held virtually. Talked about Maya Moore, but then you had the MLS, Major League Soccer. They had to do their own, which is called MLS Back Tournament that took place down in the bubble in Orlando. So it was a lot of stuff. The Rock purchasing the XFL League. I know we talked about that a little bit off air, but that was huge.
No. And also, just the one we can't forget that was more recent is the MLB bringing in the Negro League players, and adding that recognition to them. Not more so props to the MLB, but definitely props to friends of the show down at the Negro League Museum, and really keeping that fight alive for these players and for the families of these players. Because that's really a significant moment in history to have such an overlooked league really start to get the recognition that they have deserved for hundreds of years.
Agreed. And then you have Sarah Fuller, who first woman to play and score in a Power 5 football game, which I think that was huge.
Historic, and it's one of those moments where a lot of men try to like downplay it, but it's still like a huge moment. Like she might not have kicked the longest field goal, she might not have made the most points as a kicker this year, but just to even make that possibility. And we saw it on the movie Necessary Roughness back in the 90s. Like, so again, really life imitating art, because somebody thought of it, and 20 some odd, almost 30 years later, it actually happened. And like that's huge.
And then looking back for the last one a couple weeks ago, anticipated fight, legends Mike Tyson and Roy Jones. This was overshadowed on the internet, basically by Jake Paul, YouTuber Jake Paul's right hand to three-time NBA slam dunk champ Nate Robinson. Knocked him out cold.
And I could revert to a Twitter joke. What's something that isn't racist but feels racist? Like, this was just it was so brutal. And you hate it for Nate Robinson because it was almost like a David and Goliath thing. Like, I don't know if anybody expected this. Like, maybe they expected a draw. Maybe it was like, oh, Nate Robinson's going to give him the business. No, it was none of that.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate everybody who joined in on today's show. Again, we have a lot in store for 2021. Hopefully everyone that has, we can call them our View Crew. That's what we're going to start calling the people that tune in each and every week. The View Crew. We appreciate everybody who joins in and listens to us on 100.1 FM. We hope that everyone will have a happy New Year. It's crazy. New Year ends in 2 days, everyone.
Yeah, wild, super wild. So
we can't hear you, though. But we will be right back here on Saturday morning to bring you a new show for 2021. We are out of here.
Peace.
The views and opinions expressed on the W Radio Show by the host, co-host, guests, and call-in listeners are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not represent the opinions of the W Show, 100.1 FM, One Kansas City Radio, Sideline Sports Talk, Team Wall Street Foundation, or affiliates.